Welcome class to Chapter 10, Files and Exceptions in your Python Crash Course textbook. This chapter will have 4 separate lecture videos. This first video is going to cover the objective reading from a file. Text files can contain valuable information such as weather data, traffic data, literary works, user input, and the list can go on. So reading from a file is useful in data analysis or simply presenting the data from a file on a web page. So how do we read contents of a file? We use the read_text method, and this reads the entire contents of the file and returns it as a single string. So we're going to work with a text file called pi_digits.txt. We're also going to work with a separate Python file called file_reader. pi_digits.txt looks like this. It's 3 separate lines, and we're going to read this file into our file reader program. Now I have a couple of different versions of it as we go through and edit and modify, but we're going to focus on the first one on page 184. So from pathlib, import path. So we're bringing in a library, and the library is pathlib, and pathlib makes it easier to work with files and directories no matter which operating system you or your program's users are working with. And so the module that we're working with is called path. So the next line is path equal path pi_digits.txt. So path is the exact location of the file or folder on the system. And we'll talk about relative versus absolute paths here once we get through this example. Then we have read_text, which we looked at already, and it's going to read the entire contents of the file and store it, storing it as a single string. So we're going to use the path variable, which is going to refer to pi_digit.txt. We're going to read the entire contents into a single string and then store it in contents and then simply print out contents. Okay, so here is our output, and looks much like what our file pi_digits.txt looks like. Now if you end up with a blank line, maybe perhaps under this last line here, just go ahead and add in R strip, and I'm going to do that right now. We take currently what's in contents, and we're just going to go ahead and strip off that rightmost space. So again, if you have that there, that's what you'll want to add. It's okay to add it even if you don't have that. You can also combine these two lines by doing what we call method chaining. So instead of having this separate line essentially overriding the variable contents, we can just go ahead and add our strip directly to this line. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this line out now. Now again, even if you don't have that extra blank line, that extra space, this is really good to have because you'll never know if that would happen on someone's operating system. Next, we'll talk about relative versus absolute paths. So what is a relative path? This is a relative path, meaning where in the location of my current file that I'm working with, so file reader, where is pi_digits.txt located? So if I were to go ahead and look here, I can see that pi_digits is in the same location as my file reader. So I don't need to specify a path. Now I could store all of my files in a folder called text_files, or I could call it data, and then I would specify that file path here. Okay, so in my example here, I actually have data. So I could type in data here, and then it would go ahead and look for that folder relative to where file reader is at. So file reader here. Okay, I'm going to look for the data folder, and then I'm going to go ahead and find my file. So that's a way that we could go ahead and organize our files. Now if we do absolute path, what we do is we start from the very top location. So it might be something like E drive, maybe it's pointing to a flash drive, colon / and then it would just continue to go all the way down the absolute path to that file location. We'll next look at how we can access a file's line. So we're going to use a for structure. So you can see that the first couple lines here are the same, but now we're going to be using a new method called split lines, and split lines returns a list of all lines in the file. So in our case with PyDigits, it's going to return 3 separate list values, okay, stored in our list called lines, and then with lists we know that we need to use a for structure to go ahead and run through them. So let's go ahead and modify our file reader to have the next version here. Okay, so the edits are made. All I did was comment out this line and then added in these 3 lines. So I'm going to go ahead and run it, and we get the same result. But again, now we have a list that we could work with each individual line in the file. Next, we're going to look at how we can work with the file's contents. So after you've read the contents of a file into memory, you can do whatever you want with that data. So the difference between this code you see here on your screen and this code that we just ended up with is that we're only able to access those lines of the file within this code here. So what we're going to do is store it in a string next so that we can work with that string. Okay, so reviewing the edits here, again, still using split lines to store each individual line in our lines list. And now we've created an empty variable called py_string, which we're going to append to. Okay, so each line that's in our lines list, we're going to strip off the left space, and actually I'm going to take that out just for now so that we can see the results of what would happen here. So let's go ahead and run it. We're going to get the py string to be outputted, and then we're also going to get the length of it as well. Okay, so you can see that we have this spacing here, and it's caused from when we create lines in files. It's just simply the new line feed, and that's why we want to go ahead and add back in that L strip so that when we run this, that we don't have that extra space caused by the new line feeds. Now we're going to update and change our file to pi_million_digits.txt. So let's go ahead and run this one, and it's going to take a little bit to execute, but at the end you should get the output of about 1,000,002. So let's explain what that is. So there's a million digits, of course, but the million digits are after the decimal place. So if we were to scroll up in this file, you would see these are the million digits here, so it's counting the 3 and the decimal place, and that's why we're getting 1,000,002. Now, if we didn't want to print all of those out, we could simply go ahead and add in, okay, some slicing, okay, and we'll do that in our py string down here. Okay, with that slice, we've added in just the first 52 characters, again the 3 in the decimal place, so really getting the 50 characters after the decimal place, but we're still getting the length here. The last example I want to look at before we look at our lab is PyBirthday. So PyBirthday, what it does is add in an input prompt that we can go ahead and enter in our birth date and month, day, 2-digit year format, and search through the string to see if our birthday is in that million characters. So nothing up here has changed, just the input down here. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in my birthday. Okay, and it does appear. I'm going to go ahead and run it again, and I think it's my oldest boy. I don't think his appears in the first million. Okay, so that's just another example of how we could go ahead and search through a string coming from a data file. So next, let's look at our lab for this section, and it is 10-1 Learning Python. So open a blank file in your text editor. and write a few lines summarizing what you've learned about Python so far. Start each line with the phrase, "In Python you can," save the file. Okay, so Python you can, whatever it may be. At least 3 lines. Give me at least 3 lines in that text file. Save the file as learning_python.txt in the same directory as your exercises from this chapter. Okay, write a program that reads the file and prints what you wrote 2 times. Print the contents once by reading in the entire file and once by storing the lines in a list, then looping over each line. So let's come back to our example of file reader. Okay, so within file reader, that's what I put in here as the comments. So the first way is going to be this way and the second way is going to be this way. You're welcome to do it this way for the second way as well. So if you have any questions on reading from a file, please let me know. Thank you.